The poem about storming in teacups.
Yes.
I know exactly who I wrote it for, and he doesn't know the existence of that poem.
I would fall in love with somebody who wrote that kind of a poem for me.
He was already in love. So. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I was 15 or 16, sitting in a political meeting. It was a lot of Periyarist organizations were coming together, and I remember seeing this guy on stage, and I told my sister, he was a young leader, he was not married, must have been 40, 39. I told my sister, this is the man I'm going to marry.
Okay.
Because it was like, his speech was like that, like, it was so electric. But I don't think that, you can give electrifying speeches in English. One of my poems was about this idea of what is very central to Tamil politics is the abolition of the Devadasi system. And so one of my poems is actually to talk about the fact that, the system might have been abolished, but, the remnants that were still there. She was a woman in math, but she was also a lower caste woman in math. And for her, I think she always told me that, she is much more fair-skinned than me, and, she had studied Sanskrit. She thought they assumed she was Brahmin and took her in. Okay. Because she's no other way they would have taken me in, and then they realized later that she obviously came from a lower caste background, and then all the politics of caste politics started. The struggles of being a woman are so high and unite women across society that the question of caste is very subterranean, but it always exists. I think that we do have a narrative where we are like, we want to say that there are some victims who are more allowed to be victims than others, and I think this exists for all spectrums. People who massacre 44 people are allowed to walk away. They don't spend a day in jail. So the idea is that in some way, I know that the legal system is not going to punish somebody who abused me. This is something I have said earlier in a very provocative manner, that if I was going to write the story of my life, this would be a footnote. Because my life has been full of so many interesting stuff, and I'm not making it up, so many brilliant stuff, and so many important and, crazy people, and like in their own way, that this is like 2 months just a footnote. It's tiny, but also it's irrelevant, because I have done big things. That's one of the things that you observe in this book, is that not only does she have no name, you don't even know how she looks like. There's nothing, because I was like, any Indian woman should read this and see herself there, because she was going to see herself there. The fact that a woman has a life, or the fact that a woman has rights about sex doesn't mean that, she is somehow betraying the working class. I think it's a huge social problem, and I think the huge social problem is not Indian men's impulse towards violence as much as the fact that it is our society is like, log kya kahenge, and stay for longer. All marriages are like that, and somehow parents tying their success of their children's marriage to their own success. It's not. And I realized that how strong love must be to make some man feel so weak. You know what I mean? Like, I was thinking that this was really the whole thing, that the idea of love is something that people cannot tolerate, and you could love people. So I think that love actually has made me a very strong woman. For some people, the question of marriage is so complicated. The question of living with another person is hugely disturbing. It means a fundamental shift of the life. For some other person, it's like telling somebody to be in their life is like folding your clothes and putting it in the cupboard. Not many people come to that realization that you need to combine Periyar and Ambedkar and Marx to eventually change the fabric of this society and free it from all the inequality that exists here. My Kali kills. And Sita climbs on a stranger's lap.
Well, my first encounter with Meena Kandasamy was on YouTube. When I saw a clip many years ago while she was performing at a poetry festival in Durban. She was performing a poem called Storming in Teacups. It was about making tea, but it wasn't just tea. It was seduction, fantasy, labor, desire measured in cardamom pods, milk, and steam clinging to your skin while you wait. The imagery was sensuous, the delivery exact, and it left an impression that hasn't quite faded yet. Before her, for me, Indian poetry meant the great Urdu shairs or Shamsher Bahadur Singh, Mukti Bodh. That was the tradition that I had reached out for. And English meant it was coming from somewhere else or in translation. But here she was, someone entirely Indian and entirely modern, who did not seem to be apologizing for her English and who made language do exactly what she wanted. She was someone who spoke of love and violence with the same precision, who brought her body, her politics, and her entire burning self to the page. So today on this episode of Soft Record, we'll meet her, Meena, poet, novelist, translator, activist, and find out what it means to be her. Welcome, Meena.
Hi. Thank you,
Thank
Pritha,
you
for
so
having
much
me.
for accepting the invitation to be here. And I believe it's the first time that you're in Kolkata, right?
Yes.
And how is that for you? How has that been so far?
Because I mean, like, it's very strange. Like, I haven't been to the city, but I've only read about Kolkata, right?
Okay.
Like, so for me, it was this mythical place that exists even within India. You know, it's so close to you in the sense that you can always book a ticket and go there.
Yeah.
But I've never been here. So it was lovely. But I was also surprised that I can still have a first time in life. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there are many more first times to come. But let me also the first time question for you. That do you remember the first time that you wrote something and you thought that this is not just for me; it needs to be shared?
I think I felt that way about writing essays actually, because, I always had this idea that, things were going wrong and somebody has to write about them. So I think, but I never looked at essays as literature, it was still like, oh no, something's wrong. So you have to write.
What was that age when you started writing essays?
I mean, my first serious essay was about Naipaul. So he won the Nobel Prize and I lost my shit. I was not competing or anything. It was just because I was like, it was so close after 9/11. And the whole idea was that, the Western world had to, find somebody to say that, their values were the greatest. And it had to be guarded with, with everybody else being so apologetic or, and explaining it away. And I thought he was the perfect person for that, for them, because he was in so many ways racist and, whatever else. He really believed that people were not equal. And, so I thought that they found the right scapegoat to give the prize to. So I wrote a long essay about that. I think 10,000 words or something.
Do you remember the title of the essay?
Yeah, because I spent a lot of time getting there. It was called Casteist, Communalist, Racist, and now a Nobel laureate.
Okay.
So
that's
I worked hard on the title, but so that was possibly the first time. But I think with my poetry, as you say, this idea of not sharing is really a big feature, right? Like it's so intimate and it's so full of emotion that you're like, and you're also not sure it's ready to go into the world. And I think with me especially, I don't share my writing even now with people I love, people I'm in relationships with, because I am not ready for that. So I try to go into a safe zone where I can only share my work with readers, agents, right? People, even my parents, okay, but
even now you feel that?
No, I don't think any of the people I have dated have read anything I have written.
Really? No. How do you know that? I'm sure they must be reading it behind your back, or they've...
No, like my partner, for instance, he's possibly the one who's read the most, who's now my husband. I think he's not read my last 3-4 books. Okay. He's just been caught up in his life, and I'm like actually lucky for me,
Really?
Yeah.
But okay, that is okay from people who are not reading, but of course you're putting it out in the world, and there's so many strangers reading your poems and reacting.
Yeah.
So is that a different? You're okay with that, right?
No, obviously I want people to read. I don't want. My writing, my writing to come between me and someone else, when I navigate love. I think it's like the poem about storming in teacups. I know exactly who I wrote it for, and he doesn't know the existence of that poem.
How do you know he doesn't know the existence of the poem?
He doesn't read in English, he reads only in Tamil, so no. So I mean, I think it's also, I don't know how, it's also very precious, right? Like, I'm not sure how it would land for him. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a precious thing between us that would he be fine with this? I don't know. So it exists in a world outside of him. He exists in a world outside of my poetry.
I would fall in love with somebody who wrote that kind of a poem for me.
He was already in love, so.
But anyways, we will come to all of those aspects of your life, but let's start from the very beginning. I want to understand, what was your home like when you were growing up? What kind of sounds you can remember in the background, voices, quarrels, or, songs? Mm-hmm. What is it that you remember?
I think it was an interesting place because my parents were both academics, and my mom was a math professor. My father was a faculty of Tamil, but he used to teach classical Tamil. So it was in that sense a house full of books. There was no question. But also, when I was the years after I was born, my dad was still doing his PhD. So I used to grow up in libraries. Like literally, my father. I remember once going as an adult to the Madras University Library, and he said, "There's not a single table on which you have not hopped." So I did grow up a lot among books, but I also think that one of the things I like about my parents was they had an inter-caste marriage, and they were breaking a lot of stuff, but they also made their home into this place where activists would come and trade unionists would come. At the time, the Elam liberation struggle was big. So, people who are sympathetic to the Tigers would come. So it was a transit point for many people. And, even after we moved to to the IIT campus because earlier we used to live by the Interplicate, which is a very working class area. Then we moved to IIT because mom got a job there. But even then my home was my parents were so instrumental in helping or trying to consolidate all the unions within the campus, the hostel employees union, the faculty union, and, the Dalit employees union. And they were part of starting the OBC employees union. So it was and it was, therefore you get an access to how do these things work really early on. And I think that actually, I never would have realized at that time, but now I realize that it is something to have a home like that, to have a home that so many people use as a meeting point. I don't think it happens with our generation. So definitely I have too much nostalgia for that time, and for also as a young person to go and take part in adult conversations and to hang out and listen. So I think it was very foundational to have them.
Right. And what was your relationship to English then? So did you reach out for it or did you resist it?
English, yeah. No, I think English was more, it was a language of convenience for me. It's a very basic but very material way of looking at it, because I went to a Kendriya Vidyalaya, which is 3 minutes from my home. So it was the easiest choice. Yeah. And I learned Hindi and English and, whatever Sanskrit they called it, their language, which wasn't a lot.
Yeah,
but then I didn't learn my mother tongue at school. And I think that's always remained.
Which was Tamil?
Tamil, yeah. So for me, it was always this whole, the idea of deprivation around Tamil has been great. Which is why I became a translator later on and all of that. And, just threw myself headlong into it. But English was convenient and I had it. And it was there. But also I think it's really a beautiful language in terms of, the vastness of its literature. But I also think that it allowed me an escape from whatever was around me, in that sense, that I could fashion a different person out of English than what I think the life that was handed out to me. Because on the one hand, my parents were always politically very progressive, hugely. But they were still, I think, traditionally very conservative, in the sense that I still remember wearing my first pair of jeans when I was 25 years old. Because I had to leave the country.
These two things kind of coexist.
It can, because I think for my father, the idea of the Tamil person, it's not just the good Tamil, he wouldn't say that, but the Tamil person was that, you hold your culture, you hold your values, and therefore these were all seen as Western influences. And you could still be being militant is a Tamil value, being progressive is a Tamil value, being equal is a Tamil value. But I think, I think at some point, women's freedom and Tamil value would not have, I don't even think they clashed, it just did not come or arise for me. So it was quite interesting for me to have these ruptures as well. And I think I think that I was allowed this kind of space also because I was writing in a language where I wouldn't have anyone else, like close family, and I telling me what was the good thing to write or the bad thing to write. So yeah.
And what was the earliest feeling of Tamil? Like
for me,
yeah.
How did Tamil enter me in my life? Well, obviously,
not how did Tamil enter your life, but what's your earliest memory of, I mean, I wouldn't say it's the earliest memory of Tamil, but not the language, but the feel of it.
I think there's a multiple places in which you understand that for all the writing in the English, for all the books, literature, everything that I think I'm really drawn to Tamil. So yeah, and I do think that it comes from all of these reinforcements over time. I would say that some of it is Tamil devotional prayer songs because my father, today he's an atheist, doesn't believe in God, but he used to be extremely devout, and he used to get up like at 4 a.m. and sing songs during Margari, all the prayer songs, and also there was like all the Siva Puranam type of thing, which is Tamil has a huge bhakti tradition, right? And so I still think I've never heard anyone render, for instance, the Siva Puranam the way my father would render. So, and I think these words are magical, right? Like being prayer songs, but also the meaning that it holds, because even if you're reading it as a prayer, it is a universal emotion. For instance, in somewhere they would say to Shivan, right? Imaipurudum en nenjil neengadan tharal vaalga, which means that even for the second of a blink of an eye, you stay in my heart without getting removed. And it's beautiful, right? It's so, I mean, like, irrespective of how much you understand God, but to hold that emotion, to hold that space, and to hold it in I mean, I have no access to the oral tradition, but for me to listen to that, I think it was huge. But then I also, and even today, like, sometimes I live with a Belgian, he speaks French, we have no language in common. But if I hear Tamil prayer songs, I feel like my parents are in the next room. Like, I think it takes me home. But also, I think that for me, the other thing was obviously listening to speeches, political speeches, because Tamil, again, like my parents would drag me to every single political agitational meeting they could, which was in a radius of accessibility. And obviously the 90s was a period of, a lot of organizing around the tigers, because it was still a homeland issue. And it was also a time when my mother decided, very unlike for a mathematician, to take the IIT to court, saying you should implement Mandal Commission reservation, the recommendations and have. So a lot of agitational struggles used to happen around that. So I think I also used to listen to all of these meetings on the stage. So I think that, left an imprint on me, because I think Tamil speeches also is how Tamil people make politics. So I think I remember, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I was 15 or 16 sitting in a political meeting. It was a lot of Periyarist organizations were coming together, and I remember seeing this guy on stage, and I told my sister, he was a young leader, he was not married, must have been 40, 39. I told my sister, this is the man I'm going to marry. Okay. Because it was like, his speech was like that, like, it was so electric. But I don't think that, you can give electrifying speeches in English. Definitely. There's something about Tamil that...
I remember feeling that when I've heard Sita Kali speak for the first time, very, very long ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was when I was 14, but I still had an infatuation.
But you know what I mean? That's the age when you get into politics, but also you get into, language, and it shapes you, and it's fundamental to who and what you are. Yeah. So yeah, this is all.
But you chose English as your main language for creative expression. Why? And not Tamil?
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem of, the sort of Hindi imposition that goes on, like no Kendriya Vidyalaya in Tamil Nadu is, you have Tamil as a subject. You just cannot learn your own language. So I was never able to learn it within a school structure. Like I learned it from, reading headlines and newspapers and, reading wall writing. And then going back, and I think when I was 13 or 14, I started reading the Tirukkural with my father's help. So I did learn it, but it's not the same that you learn from as a child, right? Like it doesn't give you the same confidence and stuff like that. So, but I think English was, I think even if I knew all the Tamil, it's possible I might have selected English to write in. Because when a parent is very good in one language, I think we're afraid of what they would say, and how they would react, and would they be critical, or would they be like, just drown you in praise. It can go either way, right? So
yeah. All right. Did poetry come before politics, or it was the other way around?
No, I think politics was always there. I never realized that. I don't think I saw a universe in which I would be a writer. I don't think I had that aspiration or even that imagination, because you should have writers in your life to, project or something, so I don't think that kind of thing happened. But politics was always, I mean, like I at least grew up with, pictures of tiger leaders in my room kind of thing, So we definitely were very politicized, and it was impossible not to get politicized. You're Tamil, right? It was everywhere. And I think that politics was definitely front and center. I think poetry was like much later.
So what was the first poem that you wrote?
The first poem that I wrote. I think I wrote a poem. No, I was reading a lot of Kamala Das, definitely. But I also think I wrote a poem because I started working in this magazine called the Dalit, which was, very interesting because it was before Facebook, before any social media existed. So even to print 500 copies and to send it around the country felt like so liberating that, you were doing something. The mainstream media was not writing about these issues. We were trying to get something done. And at the time, I used to go to a lot of fact-finding missions. I would go to these people's tribunals and hear things. And even if I was writing it down as a kind of reportage, I could never capture the emotions I felt. And a lot of my emotions were anger and being upset and, understanding so much. But one of the things that I always think that, all these moments could take it, the Periyarist or the Dravidian or the Dalit movement, is that the question of women could have been developed more. And the question of sexuality, I think, has always been glazed over. And I think so one of my poems was about this idea of what is very central to Tamil politics is the abolition of the Devadasi system. And so one of my poems is actually to talk about the fact that, the system might have been abolished, but, the remnants that were still there, and, there's so it was a little bit about, it was about that, I think, yeah.
So because I kind of imagine, and which also find to be true in my own case, and also, when you read memoirs and writing processes of poets, the first poems always spring out of not such heavy politics. They just spring out of some sort of an inner recoiling or a place of extreme solitude. And you're just maybe falling in love for the first time, or just becoming a teenager. That's, I remember, reading about Neruda, and he said that my first poems spring from, just the presence of rain and my own loneliness, which kind of grew into political poetry much later.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think you're right. I think it was just just possibly the first one was that, but I think all my first earlier poems as a group of poems, I think they were a lot of them were about love. I think that, and they were all about love with just this one person. So it was like, he was my universe of meaning. And, so the same Storming in Teacups poem, I think there was something called Non-Conversations with the Lover. I think a lot of this, I think every single poem in that book in some way was about him, like, all the love poems. And I also think it spilled over into my next collection, and I think it spills over across all my 3 collections. So this guy has possibly does he's not aware of it, but possibly has too many poems.
So which was the poem which was first published?
This is a good question. I think Little Magazine.
Okay.
Yeah, ran this poem on Gandhi. Because
Mohandas Karamchand?
Mohandas Karamchand.
Okay.
Yeah. I think they really liked it because, and I think it was the first one that was published. Yeah, and then the Sahitya Academy interestingly published a collection of, 8 or 10 poems, and I was very surprised. But yeah.
Tell me something, when you were growing up, and was the word Dalit used out loud? Like, did you hear it, or did it arrive through books, movements, and protests? Or was it something which was present?
Yeah, this is, I think, I clearly knew how this happened. The first time I would have heard this word or anything was because, this was 97. So 91 is Mandal Commission. 96, my mother moves to the court for Mandal Commission recommendations. She's a very interesting position. She's a woman in math, a woman in pure math, which is, algebra, which apparently all her Tambram colleagues would say, this is not even math. Algebra is not math. Okay. You can understand, right? So she was a woman in math, but she was also a lower caste woman in math. And for her, I think she always told me that, she is much more fair-skinned than me, and, she had studied Sanskrit. She thought they assumed she was Brahmin and took her in. Because she's no other way they would have taken me in, and then they realized later that she obviously came from, a lower caste background, and then all the politics of caste politics started. And obviously caste doesn't exist only at the bottom of society, it exists at every level. So she drags them to court, and it's a long battle. And obviously my father and my mother decide that, we can't, this is not a fight for just the two of us. We can't handle all of it. We need public support. We have to mobilize public support. See, the land on which the IIT sits is Tamil Nadu's land, right? And it's Tamil Nadu politicians who brought the IIT to here. And we have to stake claim to it. Tamil Nadu gives electricity, water, the roadways, all of these things. So how do we mobilize the political people? So we were, obviously they were talking to a lot of politicians, like, the Periyarist and all. And I remember one day my father coming back and saying, there's this one young Dalit politician we should go and meet. And the political party's name in Tamil was Vidudalai Chiruthaigal, or Liberation Panthers, but in English they were always called DPI. DPI for Dalit Panthers of India. And so my mother goes to meet him, and this must have been 99. But for me, that is like, obviously, I was like, okay, this is the DPI we are talking about. And, in one sense, my parents were meeting, and this is the personal family story. But the public broader story outside is that, in the 90s, a lot of violence starts happening against Dalit people in Tamil Nadu. And these are extremely horrible levels of violence, like in May level, somebody wants to contest in a panchayat election, and that man contests, is a Dalit man. So at the time, K.R. Narayanan is the president of India. But a Dalit man trying to contest a local election in a panchayat is beheaded, and 7 others are killed with him. And then you realize that the DPI is part of the struggle, and you read about the DPI in all the press. So obviously these two worlds were intersecting for me. And I think that, the word Dalit, which is not a Tamil word, but it was very much, I think the 90s is when it started becoming everyday discourse.
Do you remember when you first named caste in your writing?
When I first named caste?
Yeah, when did it first feature in your work as a subject?
Pritha, this is a very interesting question that you asked, because I think that caste was a constant rehearsal. And why caste was a constant rehearsal was, I can think very clearly about it. Again, my mother's litigation process involved a lot of work, to go to the court and stuff, and she had to teach all the time, so she couldn't go. My father is a Tamil professor, but cannot can read English, cannot write English, is not fluent enough to write. So he used to drag a 12-year-old me to all the lawyers in the city. And they used to dictate the affidavit, and I used to take these notes. And they used to say,
why would he take you there, just so that...
No, to brief the lawyers about what's happening with my mother.
Yeah.
And if they had to give any legal notes to take points and come back to my mother, and somebody had to write it out, right? Like,
so
all
you
these,
were the one who
I
was
was the one transcribing these things. And therefore the story of, the words like, what is discrimination, and, how these are constitutional rights to education, and, how this, to talk about it, in the language of the law, but to talk about caste is, something that should not exist. I think it came really early to me in that sense. So even if it was never my writing, obviously these affidavits my mom was going to sign before she filed them, but I understood it in so many ways, right? In so many ways, and so it was always a preoccupation. It was a huge preoccupation that would have to invariably, I think, surface when I was trying to write. So,
Right. And, you've written about being a twice Dalit, a woman and a Dalit. So, when was that moment when these two facts collided? I mean, not just in your life, but
no, but I'm not sure I have actually said about this as my condition, that I would have said this about Dalit women in general. They're twice discriminated. Because my situation is, because I think there's a little bit of flattening by just saying I'm Dalit, which, I have understood and got pointed out, which I think is the fact that my caste background is really interesting because of how it comes from. So my father's a nomadic tribe, and my mother is a lower caste Shudra, OBC. And they had an anti-caste marriage. And not only did they have an anti-caste marriage, they also were completely it was inter-caste, anti-caste. They never told us anything about, like in terms of the fact that, they would always tell us reject the caste system because caste system gives birth to imbeciles. Like it's only inbreeding, So when they bring you up like that, you revolt from a young age about the idea of caste. They were like, if anybody asks you about your caste, you just say, I'm like, I don't have any caste and I'm like beyond caste, and saying that, I'm not an imbecile like you. Like this is exactly how my parents told me. I think that's how they protected themselves and us against it. They said that, that's why Indians are stunted. That's why Indians, have all these problems. So in some way, they always made me feel proud of the fact that, that they had decided to fight their identity to come together, and that I would have to do that as well. So I don't think that I belong to either my mother or my father's caste, because if I was going to belong to one of them, they would have as well married into their caste. The fact that they did a rupture with their marriage means that I belong outside of caste. But when it comes to, the word Dalit again, in terms of the way it's expressed, stands politically as a movement against caste. But in terms of identity, would be reduced often to SC or a scheduled caste identity, and would not embrace people who are technically non-caste or technically out of caste or technically intercaste. So I think that's a small difference there. But in terms of this kind of discrimination, I do think that, women are always it never is very apparent, right? Obviously, the struggles of being a woman are so high and unite women across society that the question of caste is very subterranean, but it always exists. Like with marriages, it exists. People are, sent out of, homes, or people, honor killings happen to this day. But also with women, a lot of times you find that they'd say, oh, but you can't do higher studies, You rather get married, and then if your husband permits you, go and do higher studies. It's this whole control that, you have to get married young, you don't have agency. So many choices of women in that sense are actually caste controlled. And why are women not allowed to study? Why are they not allowed to go abroad as much as men? Why can't they take the job? Because the idea is that, if a woman has that level of freedom and mobility, she's going to make her own choices. And I'm not sure the society is willing for that or ready for that. Which is why, we have one of the lowest labor force in enrollment for women in the world. So I think all of that.
Right. So you also said, just as you were, kind of refuting my question that, I don't know if you've said this or not, because the internet throws quite a lot of things, but have you said that you are not a good victim? And which kind of brings me to the fact that people expect you to perform a certain kind of pain representing whatever you do.
A good victim in terms of, I don't know if I said that, but I get where it comes from. I definitely get where that comes from, because and it's not about one type of victimhood, it's about all types of victimhood, right? Like for instance, if you have to talk about discrimination, and it's everybody's business. We have to talk about violence and discrimination, especially violence. But people will be like, what does she know of suffering firsthand? And the question is obviously that I think I was very exposed to everything very early, and I think in that way, in some way, I think fame protects you. So I wouldn't have everybody's path, right? So I've been insulated. But at the same time, it also means there's a double-edged sword. Is that, for instance, if you're in a violent or abusive relationship and you come outside and talk, but people would not listen to you because you're not the perfect victim. The perfect victim is silent, quiet, not assertive women, not a feminist woman, not a woman who actually is capable of thinking first. How could this happen to you? You know what I mean? So I think that we do have a narrative where we are like, we want to say that, there are some victims who are more allowed to be victims than others. And I think this exists for all spectrums.
Right. So let's talk about the book When I Hit You. And so where did it stem from? Did it stem from your own relationship, your own marriage, right? Or but the narrator here is anonymous in the book. Did you choose that deliberately? Or
no, I think the problem is that I think there's a very broader social problem and there's a very specific literary problem that when I had to write, I had to decide to myself. And I think the broader problem is the question of the legal system. I think with my parents' experience, but also with the experience of what happens to big massacres like Kilyanani, Batanitola, Lakshmanpur Bate. You see that if there's something in Indian judiciary, it's that the culprit never gets punished. The accused always walks away. And this was been like, something I've learned through writing my first novel. So people who massacre 44 people are allowed to walk away. They don't spend a day in jail. So the idea is that in some way, I know that the legal system is not going to punish somebody who abused me. Because that's men would have the upper hand. And I still remember, like, when my own trial was happening, the lawyers bringing poems from Miss Militancy and saying, this is the kind of women you're talking about here. And, basically then showing pictures of me with politicians and saying, who are these people? Do you know them? In public and in the court. And I'm like, I meet politicians. It's my job. Like, I'm a journalist. But just to say that, she's a woman who can meet politicians. Do you think she'd have been a good wife? To put the seed of doubt of your character. So I knew really that, if I was going to say this and I wrote for the Outlook about it. I think I wrote for Outlook in 2012, days after I walked out. And this was possibly 13 years ago. So I have no problems in writing as far as I don't get onto the, the messier side of, legalities and stuff, which can actually, I think, hold down anybody. But coming to the fact of, when I wanted to write this as a novel, I really wanted everybody to relate to this. I don't think it was ever Meena Kandasamy's story. Because I also think, and this is something I have said earlier in a very provocative manner, that if I was going to write the story of my life, this would be a footnote. Because my life has been full of so many interesting stuff, and I'm not making it up, so many brilliant stuff, and so many important and, crazy people, and, like in their own way, that this is like 4 months, just a footnote. It's tiny, but also it's irrelevant because I have done big things. I have been with, people who have shaped me, people whose life I've shaped. So I don't think that's this is inconsequential in the scheme of things of my life. I'm very clear about that. But the fact that this kind of thing could happen to someone like me, someone this outspoken, someone this feminist, someone this well-known, someone who could, if I wanted, dial in.
Let's start at the beginning. So what was the point when you got married? How old were you when you got married?
I was 26.
You were 26 and you had already written a couple of, you already published some poems?
I had already published Miss Militancy.
Miss Militancy and Touch.
I had published Touch. I had published many books of translation.
Okay. And was this the person that you married? Was this the same person who you were? No, not at all, right?
No.
Okay. So how did you fall in love with this?
I don't want to go too much into this book, into making him the point of my life.
Fine.
So,
okay. But I just want to understand where you were mentally.
It was a marriage that was very short-lived. So I married in September 2011 and I was out of it on the 10th of January 2012. It was very short and I'm out. But the thing is, and this is where I realized that it can't be my story alone, because, and it can't be, so I had to do fiction because I wanted everybody to relate. And that's one of the things that you observe in this book, is that not only does she have no name, you don't even know how she looks like. There's nothing, because I was like, any Indian woman should read this and see herself there, because she was going to see herself there. It doesn't, because these things don't matter whether you're fair or dark or thin or tall or, rich or poor. Like at some point, this very violent toxicity of the Indian marriage is going to hurt you. And if it's not physical, it's going to be mental. If it's not mental, it's going to be material. At some point, one of these circles is going to come after you and, put you in its chokehold. So I think that was like, my experience of it was obviously where I took material from, and I took a lot of material, because I think at some point in the marriage I had started making notes. I was like, I'm going to write about this. And at some point I realized actually that if I was going to write about it, what does it mean? It means the story is going to finish. That I'm going to be out of the story, because only when I was going to be out of the story I was going to write about it. In some way it actually gave me the mental clarity. And I made the decision right in the middle of the marriage. That one day I'll write about this. And when you think about that in a moment of suffering, that I'm going to write about it, you're already won the psychological battle. You know you'll be out. You know there's something for you to do. You liberate yourself. I think in that sense, writing is very liberatory. It gives you that hope,
The abuser in the novel is a Marxist, a revolutionary, a man of ideology. How important was it for you to expose not just the violence but also its justification?
I think that this is the kind of situation where you would say that the Satan can quote the Bible, right? The Shaitan quotes the Bible better than the angel or God himself. And I think that is what I precisely saw, that it did not have to be like a Sanghi type who takes an old book and says this was written in the law and therefore this is what you do. But and it did not matter which book you gave to the men. They could always read it in a way in which they could use to reinforce patriarchy. So this whole idea was that obviously, and I still believe that some of these left in India, very sorry to say, I don't mean this about the Marxists, but they behave like cults. I'm like, you can cut the word out, but they really behave like cults. And some of their cultishness is around the fact that, any expression of women's sexuality is seen as, bourgeois, imperialist consciousness, false imperialist consciousness, Western imperialist ideas. So the idea is that somehow, like, you can't be a woman and, even express something without it's like being a sign of petty bourgeois. But it's not petty bourgeois. Like, I'm not, it's the fact that a woman has a life, or the fact that a woman has, like, her rights about sex doesn't mean that, she is somehow betraying the working class. You know what I mean? But it's always made out like that.
Right. So do you think Indian masculinity has its own grammar of abuse? And what is, like you said, like in Indian marriage is going to, somehow get you in its chokehold. So what is this particular grammar that you've observed?
No, this is a very interesting question that I have not given enough or sufficient thought to. But I definitely think, because see, there is a problem that goes beyond the man, and I think this is something we all have to address, because I think the men are going to straighten out eventually, whether we like it or not. But everything else enables them, because and the primary thing that actually enables them, and you saw this like last 2 weeks ago, there was a girl who committed suicide. And I think and even for someone like me with the most supportive, lovely parents, it was always that you don't want to leave a man. I mean, women should have the freedom to leave a man, but a lot of the time women don't leave the man because they are like, what would our parents think? Will our parents accept us? Or because our parents are like, they want our marriage to be successful. And the parents are like, no, push, keep there, be there, things are going to get better. They give false hope. And I think the idea is that any parent in this country should be like, pack your bags and come back. Nobody gets to disrespect you. And my parents have always been like this for every other situation in my life. In my marriage was the first time they were like, maybe hold out a little longer. Things get better. But things never got better. But I still had to, I could have, in my mind, I could have left any day. But the whole idea was that my parents had to be fine with it. They couldn't say, but Meena, you're being impulsive. And there was always this threshold when your own parents crack, when they realize, no, this guy's going to kill you, come away. I mean, for every parent, there's that moment of, there's this threshold moment when they're going to say, come back. But I think a lot of parents don't really listen, and it shouldn't be allowed to go to that. It shouldn't be allowed to go to the breaking point. Like, somebody's, abusing you, somebody's taking away your sense of dignity, your sense of freedom, your sense of, your sense of being like, nobody gets into a marriage to, cheat, right? Like if somebody's suspecting you, it's like they really have a problem. So if somebody is treating you even with that kind of inclination towards doubt, it's abusive. Yeah. And some people should be like, just come away. And I think that if parents change their behavior, men are going to be fine, because if they're going to realize from day A to day B that this girl can walk out because her parents are going to be so proud to take her back, I don't think men will behave like this absolute, I don't know, what do you call, dictators, or, like crazy people in the home. They're going to be like, they're going to be well behaved, because the same men who are beating their wives at home are going to be subordinate in their office to somebody else and well behaved. That they can have all this mass of well behavior around society. They can as well do that at home. The only reason is because they know that this woman is a perpetual victim, that she has nowhere else to go. And if she goes outside, if she leaves the marriage, she's going to be called all kinds of names. Even her own parents will not accept her. Obviously, you are making it so, the girl's so ready for abuse when you give her into a marriage, isn't it? But even a right-minded man would take advantage of that. It takes a very strong man not to take advantage of that, isn't it? So I think it's a huge social problem. And I think the huge social problem is not Indian men's impulse towards violence as much as the fact that it is our society is like, log kya kahenge, and, stay for longer. All marriages are like that. And, somehow parents tying the success of their children's marriage to their own success. It's not.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
After the book and your marriage, did it change in the way you wrote about desire and love? How did it change?
I think there's a very particular episode that happens in the novel and is drawn from my life, where I have this laptop, and, the abusive person in my life was Marxist or leftist or Maoist. And he was like saying that you have to destroy every material reality, because if the material does not exist, only then the emotion will not exist, right? And he said that as long as you carry these material remnants, you're still going to be, thinking of your past loves. And so what he did was he opened my laptop and he typed the word lover, and everything that showed up, he deleted it. So this was like at some point, like he deleted all my emails. That was like 25,000, 26,000 emails. So I have no trace of my life until 31st of December, 2011. But also, when he deleted this word lover, one of the books that I was working on, it was called Caste in the City of Nine Gates, which was about, caste in the body. And this entire book, which is a non-fiction book, got deleted because the word lover had turned up. And, and I felt this was like, the idea that he was so against love, the fact that the fact that your fidelity to one person and that you could not even carry a memory or, an email or a mention. And I realized that how strong love must be to make some man feel so weak. You know what I mean? Like it, and I was thinking that this was really the whole thing, that the idea of love is something that people cannot tolerate, and you could love people. So I think that love actually has made me a very strong woman, and I seek it all the time. And I think that love is also what makes me believe. I would never go and say things that all men are abusive, all men are like that. I can't generalize because I have known such love, and I think that love pulls you out of all kinds of adversity. And I still believe that a lot of my politics is fashioned from love, because when we know love that is so intense and that, breaks and forgives and, cares and can last, I don't know, 3, 4, decades of life, then I think that we can change anything, when people have that kind of intensity of feeling for each other, it's not impossible to have that same intensity for, your fellow human beings. And you can imagine change if it comes from that point of love. So I don't think I've ever been disillusioned about love.
So what was the book that you wrote after When I Hit You? Was it the Gypsy Goddess that came out?
No, Gypsy Goddess was a book I was actually working on before I got married. So my When I Hit You was my second novel.
Yeah.
So I had actually been working on the Gypsy Goddess for a long time before, because in 2009, 2010, I was still going to Kill When Money and getting the stories. So when I left the marriage, I managed to, actually that's the first thing I did. I was like, I'm going to finish my novel. So the first novel I finished was Gypsy Goddess, and I got it published. And then by the time it got published, I found the mental space. I had already moved to London. I could write the second one. I could write When I Hit You. So I wrote the Gypsy Goddess, and it was based on legal facts and, an actual massacre. So it took a lot of time to write. And also, that's also how it makes you understand perspective, right? Like you're writing about the massacre of 44 people. And in that sense, anything that happens to you also becomes that much trivial, even if it is your whole life, even if it's 4 months of your life, it's still trivial compared to, the kind of big sacrifices that happen around you. So, yeah.
Tell us something about the form of the book. It was kind of written a lot in fragments, right? It kind of resisted
Which one?
Gypsy Goddess.
Yeah. No, I think When I Hit You was also fragmentary.
Yeah.
But I think for Gypsy Goddess, it was much more the idea that every chapter there was a shifting register, which was never told in one viewpoint. And I think for me that was
so there wasn't a single protagonist.
And it's also true, because the idea that we have been conditioned to read the novel or to approach the novel, for us it's always that it's the individual at the heart of it. And for me, it was this village which was at the heart of it, right? This village that decides to adopt communism to fight all the feudal evil, and they're willing to die for it. And it was like very spectacular.
And after that, you moved to London?
I moved to London and I met my partner. So this was 2013 August.
Okay. So what was it moving to this other continent, this other country, and did you feel freer? How did you navigate that space, and what did it do to your creative expression? How did this new land affect you?
Oh, wow. Well, I haven't given it so much thought. Give it
some thought now.
Because for me it was never London, right? Like, because it was, I still really remember that,
maybe the new phase in life.
Because my decision to, even move was very interesting. I was doing the washing, and I think I've written somewhere about it. I was taking the laundry and, coming back. I was staying in a friend's house, and, and I remember that this man is now the father of my children. So I remember that, I had done all of this and, bought the laundry because I said I was staying and, I wanted to use his machine. And he took all my clothes and he folded them and put them in his cupboard. And I was like, that's how you move into someone's life, And it's like, and I remember being like in love before, not this abusive one, but being in love before and fighting and trying to say, get married, let's get married. And this marriage never happened, We were always thinking about what will people say, how are we going to address the age differential, how are we going to address the power differential, how are we going to convince your parents, how are we going to convince my people. It was all of this. And then at this one moment,
what was the instinct of getting married?
So, the first time, yeah?
Yeah.
No, just
the first time, and also
this time,
in this relationship.
I don't think I got married a few months ago for the visa.
I know that, but you're saying that even in my previous relation, the whole thing was about, to get married, to get...
Because I was advocating for marriage.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Why were you advocating?
Because I was still living with my parents, and and I wanted to, and I don't think I wanted to just be, have a rupture with them, move and be on my own. And because I love my parents, I had no issues with them, and I wanted to, at some point get married, and because we had been together for a long time. I think we were together 6-7 years together. So I thought marriage is a natural fulfillment of where you go with that. And I think my mom was actually the right one. She said, no, don't even think of marriage till you're 30. He will come running to you when you're 30, you know. I was like, no, I think very anxious. I was like, still 24. But you're also, when you're young, it's like, you know, you may be a writer, a poet, whatever, you know. You might have great insights into life and others and observation, but you're also still anxious about your life. And I was always like, what if you find someone better than me? And I don't think, you know, if someone's in love with you, they're in love with you. I don't think they're actually going to find the next person, or they're looking for something better than you. But that wisdom comes with age, right? It comes with knowing more people and knowing more about the same people. You know? But why I said that was, this incident made me realize that that's also how easy, like for some people, the question of marriage is so complicated. The question of living with another person is hugely disturbing. It means a fundamental shift of the life. For some other person, it's like telling somebody to be in their life is like folding your clothes and putting it in their cupboard. Like, you know, you are with me. Yeah. And I think that it depends on person to person. But so yeah, London for me was always Cedric. And London was always... it was a city because he happened to be there, you know.
Another socialist though, right? He
was a socialist, yeah. He's a dying breed. He's a Trotskyist, but yeah.
Okay. So was there any period in time when so you walked out of this marriage and then you again fell in love immediately with Cedric, or was there a time, or was there any period in time when you were happy that, you know, now I'm alone and I want to enjoy this?
I had my time. I'll tell you all about my time. So I got out of this marriage, stayed with my parents, and then, you know, I had friends. I was in Hyderabad for a while, visiting some close friends. And then by 2012, I think I managed to, I got a residency in Hong Kong. And a writing residency for a month. And I was with another woman who had also just left her husband. She's a Colombian novelist called Pilar Quintana. And the two of us would have all the craziest adventures in life. I had left a bad marriage. She had left a bad marriage. So what we would do was, you know, I don't know, how do I... Oh, no, let me go back a few months. This was October. So what I did was I got a bit of money for my first novel, The Gypsy Goddess. My agent managed to get me money. And with the money that he sent to me, I went to Malaysia, Indonesia, Cambodia, and I was meeting female tigers who had just left the camps in 2009 and were applying for asylum. So in some way, I was also my own person. I was trying to shoot a documentary. So I did not think about love as much as I was like, you know, let's give purpose to our life. So I had finished this book and then I was doing this. So this was one thing that was happening, you know, in the post-marriage period. So I met Cedric right afterwards, you know, when I had done all this shooting across these countries, talking to female tigers. But this Hong Kong episode was quite nice to be with somebody else who had also left a bad marriage, who was also writing about it. And, you know, the Hong Kong party scene. So I talked to you off the camera, but so it was quite interesting.
Okay. So then you went to London, and what was the book that you worked on there when you were...
Yeah, so I went to London. I met my editors. We were working on Gypsy Goddess still. It then came in 2014. And then I started writing the second novel. And I think my days in London were really interesting because, you know, like as I said, it's a big city. It means so much to Indian people, right? But I was staying with like, you know, 5 people in a flat. All the socialists were like, you know, renting together. Like they'd take this Victorian home. So you're basically in this one room with your partner and, you know, you have common kitchen and other dining facilities. But it's a very simple, I mean, and if you're, he was a Trotskyist, but as a full-timer in the Socialist Party at that time, so he was taking a worker's wage. So I don't think there was anything glamorous about London, except that it was London, you know. And I think I smoked a lot. I regret that. I smoked a lot because I always felt lonely. And until my partner came home, all I would do was to, you know, like take a cigarette was my company. I would go outside and smoke because it's like, okay, I have some company. I would go and sit and write all the cafes and, you know.
And what were you writing then?
I was writing the novel. Yeah, I was always writing these novels, one novel or the other. But I was also getting involved and going to a lot of protests in London. So, you know, I know where the embassy protests take place, where the, so I did have a London novel that came out eventually. It's called Exquisite Cadavers. Yeah, it's very based in London, set in London and stuff like that. And I think my next novel is also actually partly set in London. So, yeah, the London hangover is there, but I think it's now possibly cured for the good.
So tell me about this Strife with mythology. You know, you've rewritten Eklavya and rewired Sita. You made new, new gods speak in your voice. So, so to talk about that, you know, did mythology give you a sort of a new language to speak, or
my Kali kills.
Yeah.
And Sita climbs on a stranger's lap.
Yeah.
No, I think it was more about agency. No, I think, see, there's so much contradictory messaging within Hinduism. And it is really, and I grew up as, you know, as I said, in a very devotional but progressive household, right? Like they would reject caste, they would reject all of this, but we'd have prayers, right? So for me, the idea was always that these stories that they're telling you, like, you know, Sita got into all of this mistake because she went and talked to the stranger. But also her story contains the kernel of, I think, what we can take out of Sita's story, which is that she's the first woman to step across the line. You know, somebody draws a line. She's the first woman to, you know, in that sense, claim her agency. Like she likes something, she wants it. So, and I think the same thing about Kali as well, or any of the Indian godheads are like, these stories are meant to tell you one lesson, but the story remains the same. So you can have a completely different lesson as a takeaway from that. And I think that unless we learn to subvert and read these stories in our way, we're not going to have, because I think that we cannot reject, and I still strongly think about that. I don't think that we can completely reject everything that is existing in, you know, a collective consciousness and reprogram ourselves. Like, how would that happen? Like, how can you, you know, erase the Mahabharata and the Ramayana from people's mind? Even if it was meant to subjugate, we'll have to reverse these stories. We cannot completely erase and become like, oh, that tabula rasa, or what do you say, blank slate is not going to happen, right? So we have to work with what we have. We have to work with what has been given to us, and we have to subvert all of these stories and tell them another way, so that the same people who have been telling these stories to us to, you know, give their lesson are going to, you know, step back. So this is, I think, for me, it was very ideological to do that to the stories, because I think, for instance, Periyar and Ambedkar rejected them. But what do you do? Why can't you take a story and make it so subversive that the other person itself runs away leaving the story and abandons their own story, because your reading can be so militant and so subversive.
So how do you speak to the revolutionaries who came to Ambedkar, to Periyar, to Marx? How do you feel aligned with them, or sometimes in conflict?
I think it's a very intimidating question. I think that, for instance, I think with Periyar, for instance, like his work, everybody talks a lot about the fact that he was non-Brahmin movement and anti-Brahmin. But I think anti-Brahmin was just one specific aspect of Periyar, because I think Periyar's work with women is much more important. And it's like Periyar, for instance, said that pregnancy is what why there's no female Sankaracharya, the risk of pregnancy. He said the day women don't have to worry about childbirth or there's birth control, they will be as free as men are. And he was very prophetic. He was saying all this in the 1920s, right? In a time when everyone else was like really backward. Or Periyar talking about what is love, or the fact that marriage is only a social contract, nothing more than that. The fact that he was advocating for remarriage, the fact that, you know, I think that he was really progressive. But what I think missing in Periyar is the way he put Tamil women, he gave so much emphasis to women's participation in politics, and you don't see that happen. Like he said, the day Tamil women are willing to go to jail, Tamil Nadu will be liberated. So he was saying that women as the, the militant centerpieces who can form and deform politics. And I think they obviously, we are a very emancipated lot compared to anywhere in the country, but I still think that the fierceness of Periyar is, unexplored. Unexplored, obviously, because today, why would we have caste and honor killings? Yeah. Why would we still have, inter-caste marriages within endogamous marriages? No, because Periyar rejected all of that. So, I think that there are these flashpoints where I believe it's not a question of betrayal, but where I believe that so much more has to be done to explore their feminist side. So, yeah.
So do you think we're always looking at all these, in a very binary way, say Ambedkar versus Marx, or identity versus ideology? Do you think we failed to hold these tensions dialectically?
I think it's been extremely reductionist, and I have to say that. I have to say this because, whenever you talk about Marx, for instance, a lot of Ambedkarites get upset and they're like, have you read Buddha and Karl Marx? Or they just reduce it to, but Ambedkar was against, but Ambedkar was also, forming trade unions. Ambedkar was definitely, Ambedkar was against bloodshed. But do you think that we want a revolution with bloodshed? It's like, is it possible to imagine, the class struggle without bloodshed? Because at some point, when the balance of forces varies, you necessarily don't need, bloodletting. But the question for me is always and in Tamil Nadu, we have a certain difference, for instance, earlier I was talking about the DPI, or the Dalit Panthers of India. Like, they're the only Dalit party in the country that has red and blue on their flag, because they're Marxist and they're anti-caste and Ambedkarite. But not many people get there, right? Not many people come to that realization that you need to combine Periyar and Ambedkar and Marx to eventually change the fabric of the society and free it from all the inequality that exists here. So I think it's a political project, and I don't think it's a writer's project. Like, a writer can write, but I think that organizing is hard work. Organizing is going to the roots, and it's immense hard work that it takes a lot of time.
So if you had to write your own manifesto now, not in theory, but in experience, what would its first line be?
Oh no. I don't know. I don't know about society, but I definitely know. I know something about self-care. I would tell everyone to go and sleep well. Okay. Because I think what I observe is that a lot of people are picky, irritant. I think that enough sleep will actually make us all tolerant with each other. But this is not political. This is personal advice.
In 10 years, I haven't slept for more than 3 or 3.5 hours in my life.
You need to put a timetable and sleep sleep hours.
But so tell me, is Tenderness hard to write, or Rage is harder to write? Which is more difficult to express?
Okay, I think both emotions I hold and I explore all the time. I think the thing with Tenderness is you have to make sure it's not cringe, because we still live in a society where people will laugh at vulnerability, will laugh at because they never maybe had it in their life, or because they're afraid of losing it, or think it's too fragile. So I think with Tenderness, it's that. I think with writing Rage, you have to ensure it's not propagandist, like, it doesn't sound like, it still needs a literary quality to justify its own existence, because otherwise it becomes like slogan shouting, sloganeering from rooftops. And there is I think the best slogans are very literary, but I think that, you'll have to find that balance.
Do you think your poems scare people?
No, I scare people.
Sorry?
I scare people, not poems.
You scare people. No. Do you write every day?
No. Sadly, no.
What's your process? What's a good writing day?
No, actually no. But I'm also this kind of person who I realize takes so much shelter in intellectualizing everything.
Yeah, you do. At least giving punchy one-liners.
No. So I think what has happened to me over time is that I have learned to explain away my not writing, that thinking is very healthy.
Yeah.
And my own understanding is that, you look at land, right? Like any farmer has land, they're going to farm for a season, then they're going to let it lie fallow. And only then they're going to start farming the next season. And this fallow period is the most important period actually for agriculture. That when nothing gets done on the land is when it gets ready to do everything for you, right? And I think that period of emptiness is really important. So when I'm not doing anything, when I'm idling away and, I'm just spending the day on social media or,
one-liners.
Smoking.
All Indian poets are toxic.
No, I didn't say that, no.
Okay, sorry. Okay, no, she didn't say that.
No.
Maybe I heard her right. Did we hear it wrong, right? Yesterday?
No, I said that
Indian male poets.
Indian male poets.
Yeah.
If you get into a relationship with Indian male poets, you're possibly getting into something toxic. Yeah, but some version of that. Yeah.
Some version of that. So
I'm not speaking from experience. I can project it already and say
that's what I'm saying. Is this like your version of mindfulness, or
the fallow period?
This is the fallow period.
No. What do you mean? Like
no, I said like so. When you sum these, when you give these one lines, is this, are these declarations coming already formed from have they already formed inside you, or they just come at the spur of the moment? But they are big declarations.
No, which of this would sound cool?
Exactly. Okay. Let me just get to the last section. So this is something which we call from the archive or for the archive, but it just is very rapid fire, this or that choice questions where you don't have to explain your answer.
I won't. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
But people are going to read between the lines, because the choice, when you're forced to choose, then it definitely says a lot more, right? So, I'm
also a Libra, so I'm very indecisive. So
okay, let's go for it. So, okay, a word you overuse but cannot live without.
But.
Okay, a mythological figure you'd never write about.
Oh.
None comes to mind, or?
No, I can't think of it.
A book that changed how you understood power.
The autobiography of Malcolm X.
Yeah. Okay. What's the worst advice you've received as a writer?
Write every day.
Okay. A poem of yours that surprised you when it arrived.
I'm surprised at all my poems when they come. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. They resist me and they come. Yeah.
A word in Tamil that has no equal in English. See, many, I suppose, but.
Anbu, maybe.
What does it mean?
Anbu is not romantic love, but it's love. It's a more embracing form of love. I don't think that English can have that word. Yeah.
All right. What's your least favorite compliment?
You're photogenic.
Okay.
I think it's a very backhanded, it's a very evil compliment. If people come and say you're photogenic, they actually mean you're ugly. It's just the cameras love you. So yeah. No, I don't like that.
Okay. A revolution you still believe in?
The Marxist revolution, the right of people for self-determination, the feminist revolution. That's 3, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. Okay, so now it's going to be this or that. Just choose one.
Okay.
So, poem or protest?
Protest.
Okay. Rage or restraint?
Rage.
Rage, of course. The sentence, Tamil or English?
Tamil.
Margin notes or manuscript pages?
Margin notes.
Okay. When I Hit You or the Gypsy Goddess?
Gypsy Goddess.
Kill your darlings or let them live?
Kill your darlings. Yeah.
Okay. Write for the page or speak from the stage?
Right for the page.
Okay. Being read in London or being banned in Delhi?
Banned in Delhi.
Okay. A room of one's own or a square on the street?
Room of one's own.
Okay. The story that's too personal or the one that's too political?
The one that's too political.
And in the end, survive it or burn it down?
Burn it down.
Burn it down.
Burn it down.
So, we began with the memory of a poem, and I think we should bookend it with you performing any poem that you want to. I mean, I would have loved to hear that again, but whichever one, just one poem that we can hear you recite.
Oh, this is well, you're giving me too much of a choice. Is there anything that you like that I can read?
I would love to hear Storming Teacups or Mulligatawny Dreams. I love that as well. But maybe you could do something from more recent works.
Yeah. Yeah, I wrote a very interesting political poem, but I'm not sure it's very interesting to read it. So this is. He replaces poetry. 2 months into love, and today I turn into a whore hunting for words, tearing them out from soiled sheets of mind or pinching them from the world, like removing jade green flecks from tiger's eyes. And poetry refuses entry into my mirrored life that's bequeathed to him. I try the mad woman's antics. I've pulled my hair and bruised my thin wrists and bit the insides of my cheeks till they have bled a warm red soreness. And I have starved in arrogance to call the words home to me and thrown up to clear me of him. But he, strong, dark man, refuses to budge, give way, or take leave. My dark nights of savage tears have gone in search of needy shores, deserting me, with the devil of a lover who sleeps half a dozen streams apart. And so have the words that once made me the sad lone woman I was and pretended to be. I'm happy now, he says, and I nod like a tango doll in breeze and reply in clawing tones, this is happiness. I know I do not indulge in lies or delusion, but this is happiness. And happiness is a hollow world for fools to inhabit, where all the dreams eventually die by coming to life. Love has smothered me to a gay inertia, and I long for a little hurt and pain that let me scream, and I wait for offending words to roar me into worlds where I shall cry wildly for whole nights, like the lament of lonely, old and greying seas. Then sadness shall come back to me with its dancing fairy lights and nail me to wailing crosses. Poetry, in the end, shall replace all of him.
Lovely.
Thank you.
How lovely, Meena.
Thank you so much.
Everything begins and ends with love, I think. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
this.
That was lovely. Yeah.